The usual rule with spending money is that the more it costs you to acquire something, the more important the purchase is to you. Very few of us would, for example, walk away from a house after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. Despite that, some people are apparently happy to abandon and walk away from some of the most expensive and valuable cars in the world, leaving other people to find them and profit from their careless nature. BMW doesn't make all that many sports cars, but when they do, they tend to be special. Opinions will differ on what the greatest BMW sports car ever made is, but the 1981 BMW M1 has to be considered a contender. That makes it an absolute tragedy that this one has spent so many years under a pile of garbage in a barn and has only driven 4,500 miles. Only 453 of these cars were ever built, with even fewer than that still around today. Yet this one was seemingly parked up and forgotten within a year of being purchased. We don't know the full story behind its abandonment, but we do know it was eventually discovered in the south of Italy by a specialist BMW recovery team called Mint Classics. Once the dust and debris were removed, it was revealed that the car is still in excellent condition, meaning any restoration work required should be minimal. One day soon, it'll be in the hands of a very lucky collector, one who will hopefully take much better care of it than the last owner. A safe, secure car park is a good place to look for an abandoned, valuable car. The owners of the vehicles have enough money to pay for the parking spaces, and they eventually forget what they're using the space for. As a prime example of what we mean, here's a Ford RS200. One of only 200 ever made. It's very obviously been sitting in this parking berth in Tokyo for a long, long time. The ultra-rare car is white, although it's accumulated so much dust over the years that it's almost turned gray. The Ford RS200 was built in a limited run between 1984 and 1986 to make the Ford Rally Team compliant with FIA Group B requirements. And this model even still has the rally-style lights attached to it. Without closer inspection of the car, we can't rule out the possibility that it's a well-designed replica, but if it is, it's so well made it'd still be worth thousands of dollars. Sadly, not every luxury car that becomes abandoned manages to stay in good condition. When a car's condition is bad, its value takes a severe turn for the worst. That's how this 1977 Lotus Esprit came to be available for purchase on Craigslist for a mere $4,500. It's an exotic car that would be worth many times that figure with enough care and restoration work, but there's little doubt that the level of work required would be a substantial commitment from whoever took it on. The shattered supercar, which is being sold in Los Angeles, was something of a disappointment when it was launched. The S1 series was hampered by emission regulations in the United States and lacked the power of models that came both before and after it. But ultimately, it's still a Lotus Esprit, and people will always be willing to pay for the brand name. Less than 1,000 of these cars were made and sold, so there's a collector value to be had here too. We're sure whoever bought it believes that they got a bargain. This dusty old racing car isn't looking its best right now, but if you can see past the dust and decay, then you'll find a vehicle with an incredible racing history. This is the 1974 Lola T32 that was driven by Brian Redman in F5000 during 1975. Along with what's left of the car is a logbook which documents and evidences the car's entry at races in Riverside, Pocono, Long Beach, and several other locations. The car was still involved in motor racing during the 1980s, with some photographs suggesting it was involved in the single-seater Can-Am classes with a different paintwork design, although evidence of this is a little more sketchy. By the 1990s, it had been placed into storage in California, and it's been there ever since. As of 2015, the car was being offered for sale, so we'd like to believe that it's now in the hands of a caring collector who's restored the bodywork and livery to something more suitable for a car with such a proud heritage. There's so much rust on this 1947 Indian Chief motorcycle that we can't tell whether the original color was brown, red, or orange, but we think most of the damage is superficial. Repair the rust and you'll have an incredible piece of vintage motorcycle design on your hands. It even still has its original Bonneville motor installed. The bike was being offered for sale from Illinois in the United States of America a few years ago, and the information provided by the seller stated that it had been placed into a barn during the 1960s and didn't come out again until after the turn of the century. It was covered, but the cover hadn't totally protected it from environmental damage. A hole in the crankcase suggests that throwing a rod was what took it off the road, and if that's the case, then it's likely the new owner would also need to repair that before they could get it up and running again. Aside from that, it looks like the only non-original feature on this bike is the seat. This next story isn't just about an incredible abandoned car, it's also about a stunning error by an auctioneer. This Type 64 has been billed as the first Porsche in existence because it was the first vehicle ever to have the badge of the legendary manufacturer attached to it. It was made by order of the German government in 1939 with the intention of winning road races and promoting German car manufacturing supremacy. Ultimately, the race was canceled due to the outbreak of the Second World War, and the car never found a real purpose until it was bought by Thomas Gruber and raced in vintage events during the 1990s. When it went to auction in 2019, it was expected to go for a price of $20 million or more. But the auctioneer misheard one of the bids being tabled and thought that someone had bid $70 million for the car. The seemingly enormous bid drove away other interested parties, and so by the time the bidder and auctioneer had clarified their offer, there was nobody else left willing to meet the $20 million reserve price. This priceless piece of Porsche history therefore remains unsold. The farmer who bought this old BMW 328 in 1971 knew he had a potentially valuable restoration project on his hands, but he never got around to starting work on it. A year passed, then it was 5 years, then it was 10. By the time he got around to the idea of selling it, it had been in his barn for 50 years, and he still had no idea of its true origin. This isn't just any old BMW 328. It's an authentic racing car that was once raced by Prince Bira of Siam in the iconic 24-hour Le Mans race of 1937, in which it finished a highly respectable third place. It was still racing a year later when it appeared in the Mille Miglia race, picking up another third-place finish, but it then performed badly during the 1938 Tourist Trophy and was retired from racing. How it then came into possession of an American farmer more than 30 years later is unknown, but it certainly got the world of car enthusiasts excited when it finally reappeared in public in early 2018. It seems that classic and collectible cars have a bad habit of turning up in farmhouses. Here's another example in the shape of this 1927 Model T Tudor Ford, which reappeared in 2015 after more than half a century in storage. Somewhat unpleasantly for the car, it had spent every year since 1946 inside a sheep shed. According to the owner who offered it for sale in 2015, the car had been sealed in by a temporary wall for its own protection. But the owner who built the wall forgot about it, and it was only rediscovered after renovation work happened at the farm. Although it doesn't appear to be in fantastic condition in these pictures, we're reliably informed that all it took was a clean out of the engine and the addition of some new tires to get it up and running again. This old Ford will soon be a century old, but as of right now, it's still proudly driving around on American roads. Iconic cars from classic movies go missing more often than you'd probably imagine they do. They're often made or bought specifically for one film they're required for, and after filming wraps, they go into storage. That's probably what happened to Steve McQueen's Mustang from the 1968 movie Bullitt, although it doesn't quite explain how and why it turned up in a junkyard in Mexico just under 50 years later. McQueen was known to be particularly fond of the Ford Mustang Fastback and even offered a reward for its safe return after it vanished. But sadly, by the time it re-emerged in 2017, he'd long since passed away. Southern California body shop owner Ralph Garcia Jr. found the car online and intended to turn it into a replica of the Nicolas Cage car Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds, but took the precaution of searching the internet for its VIN number before proceeding. The real identity of the old car he'd found was immediately revealed. He bought the car and set about the process of restoring it in the expectation that it'll be worth $1 million or more when it's complete. Considering the value of the car involved, this next story is as heartbreaking as it is stupid. Andy House, an American car dealer, is a rich man who once had a grand design on cheating his way to becoming richer. In 2006, he paid $1 million to secure himself a highly desirable Bugatti Veyron, which he immediately insured for more than double that amount. He didn't even wait more than a month after buying the car to try indulging in a little insurance fraud. House deliberately drove his Bugatti directly into a lagoon and left the engine running, thereby making it inevitable that the car would be beyond repair, and guaranteeing him a payout on his huge insurance policy when he falsely claimed to have been involved in an accident. It was a good plan, but luck wasn't on House's side. A member of the public had seen the Bugatti approaching the lagoon and got their phone out to take a video of the rarely seen car, so they got the whole incident on camera. The Veyron went in for repairs to see if it could be saved, and House went to prison. There's a special Facebook group in Singapore given over to people who love to go out looking for rare and exotic cars. And that group has never had a busier day than February 27th, 2017. That's when these photos of a lonely, clamped, and seemingly fire-damaged yellow Porsche first reached the internet, sparking a web-based investigation by amateur enthusiasts determined to find out the full story. The vehicle was found parked in a car park in the Woodlands, where it had clearly been parked for several years. One rumor that circulated was that the original owner entered into a dispute with the garage responsible for servicing the car, and the vehicle was impounded as a result. Another story that was widely believed was that the car had suffered an engine fire, which would explain why it appears to be covered in soot when no other cars anywhere near it show signs of ash or other fire issues. With no solution or cause for the problem identified, it might even be the case that the car is still standing there today. The owner of this rare Bentley had some idea that he had a valuable asset in his garage in Surrey, England. In his head, his rare 1929 vehicle was probably worth around £30,000. He got the shock of his life when he invited an expert from an auction house to his home to assess it and was told he could probably add a 0 to his own estimate. The Bentley 1929 4.5 model is the ultimate prize for Bentley collectors, and working models almost never show up on the market. This one, which has belonged to the same family for 80 years but was parked in a garage in 1985, not only works but has all of its original parts. No aspects of the trim or the body are expected to require replacement, and so with a little light restoration work, it should be capable of running again in next to no time. The guide price for a car of this type and age is £250,000. But the auction house responsible for its sale say the fact it still retains all of its original fixtures and furnishings should add at least another $50,000 to that amount. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.